much as I strolled without a care, cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
There I am. Welcome, your Backup Plan tribe, to another great show today. I'm so very excited to have you all here. Welcome, my name is Tina Ginn, Talking Taboo with Tina, brought to you by your Backup Plan app. I'm an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. I'm a financial expert and an app developer of Your Backup Plan app. I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, BC. I want to welcome all of you to our show today. I'm so very excited. Our show is on chronic illness and brain injury, and you'll be so excited to talk to this wonderful guest from Maryland that we have coming to us from the United States today. We focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about the guest's journey of a life-changing event in their life. And boy, oh boy, over the 3 years that we've been with you guys on YouTube, I can't even explain all the different stories that we have been able to have conversations with. Unbelievable stories. So if you haven't watched very many of them, please pick some that resonate with you. I'm sure you will love each and every one of them. And if you are new to our channel, welcome to our show. I always bring out my hand to like, share, and subscribe to our show down here. And if you already haven't subscribed, why not? Please do, because it helps our show get out to be pushed out to more people. So thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening. I'd like to welcome our United States and Canadian listeners. There are 2 top podcast listeners of our show, and also our German listeners who have, in the 3 years, been the top 3rd listener of our show. Meine deutsche Freunde sind in unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft. So thank you so very much, all of my listeners. I believe Ireland is 4th coming up the ranks, so stay tuned for our next big listeners. I can hardly wait. What is your Backup Plan app anyways, Tina? They say this to me all the time. Why do I need it? What is it? Why do I think I need it? It puts your life in one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance, while taking that painful aftermath out of that tragedy. What does that mean? It means that we are all going to have something happen to us in our lives. Something we don't know when, and we don't know what, but we do know that it will happen. Something will happen to us. And it's being protected. It's being planning ahead and thinking ahead. And as our guest today on our show is going to talk about her thoughts around planning ahead and how it affected her in different instances, good and bad. So be prepared for the unexpected, because it won't happen to me. I'm sorry to say, it will. Something will happen. And why not have a plan, and why not know what it is that you need to get prepared for? There's so many different things, and your backup plan covers you for all of those. And as Mike Tyson says very often, and his famous quote is, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Isn't that true? We don't realize that, we usually realize after the fact of something happening, after that knock on the door, that your loved one isn't coming home. Perhaps they're in a coma at the hospital. And believe me, climate change and COVID-19 has definitely changed our lives to make us all realize that anything can happen at any time. And we should be better prepared. And they used to be better prepared, back in Little House on the Prairies. They were prepared. They were better prepared than we are now. They had paperwork and important documents, and they'd roll it up in brown paper and stuff it up in the attic or the in the basement somewhere and say everybody knew those were the important documents. But I bet that nobody knows where their important documents are now, especially being all digital. You know, we hardly get any mail now, and Aunt Sally passes away at her apartment or at her home. We don't even know where to access some of this stuff. We don't know where her will is or where her bank accounts are or anything. We don't know what, if she has any insurance or, you know, unclaimed money is one of the biggest causes for being prepared because money is sitting in bank accounts around the world globally that's unclaimed. And it's because we don't know. And why don't we know? Because we're not prepared. So anyways, let's get on to this great story that we're going to have and get this party started. I'm going to bring on my wonderful guest, Carrie. Let's bring on Carrie. There she is. Hi, Carrie.
Hey there.
Now, I didn't ask you how to say your last name, so help us out.
Yeah, you so artfully avoided it, and I appreciate that. It's Carrie Baquie.
Baquié. And
Yes.
It's French, right?
It is. It's Creole French.
Okay, so that's easy enough to say, and I thought it was, but I seem to screw things up very easily with names, so I don't want to do that to you.
Well, I
But
appreciate it.
yes, I'm so happy to have you on here today. Our show is called Survivor of Brain Injuries and Chronic Illness, Now What? Brain injury is a puzzle. All the pieces are there, but in the wrong order, said Barbara. Our interview with Carrie today is all about surviving and thriving again after brain injuries and Lyme disease. Carrie is a spunky mom of 3 teens and a brain injury survivor who transformed chaos and overwhelm into thriving through an unstoppable mindset grounded in soul-centered strategy. And she comes to us from Maryland, and she is a chronic illness coach, and she is very much online. I have all of her information down below in the description box for everybody. So thank you so much for coming on, Carrie. I love your story, and I think there's so many of us with brain injuries, me included, that have had a bad concussion in a car accident or whatever, a work accident, whatever it might be. And I'm so excited to hear how this all started for you.
Well, I think it's going to be a little unexpected how it all started. For me, it began in 2016. I'll try to make it quick and concise, but it started in 2016 when I personally started noticing some memory and cognitive issues. I asked around, I asked my husband, I asked friends, and they said, no, you're fine. It's all good. But by 2018, other people were starting to notice, and I noticed them noticing. And I brought it to my doctor, and he did some tests, and he came back from the tests and said, your brain shows patterns consistent with Alzheimer's.
Oh.
I was 43 at the time. And so it rocked my world.
Yeah.
And that was just the beginning. That wasn't the brain injury, but that was the start of what led to the brain injury. So this was a primary physician who had given me this information and told me that I had early onset. And so I needed a second opinion from a specialist. And so when I saw a specialist in early 2019, he said, it's not a question of if dementia, but which dementia.
Oh.
And it was devastating. And I couldn't seem to make sense of this. I was 43 years old at the time. And so in order to figure out which dementia, we ran a bunch of diagnostics. And immediately after one of those diagnostics, I lost my ability to speak. I became consumed with horrible guttural fatigue that is uncomprehendable unless you've felt it yourself. I was hypersensitive to light, sound, and motion. I had pain running down my arms and legs in lightning bolts, and ultimately had 8 months straight of vertigo. But no one could explain what had happened. It was clear to me that something had happened from the diagnostic procedure, but no one was willing to make that connection. And so I went a year and a half before I was diagnosed with a rare form of stroke from likely from what the procedure had done. So that was my brain injury. That was what set me off onto a road of real hardship, real I thought I was facing the end. Given the Alzheimer's and dementia diagnosis,
Yeah.
and then all these sudden symptoms, I thought I was facing my end. And I was terrified. I was alone. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't believe what was happening. And I was working full time. I tried to keep working.
Oh, no.
And when you talk about your backup plan, two things that were really important for me in the earliest parts of my journey is that I had a financial advisor that my husband and I went to see and to ask, what do we do here? And what was really important about that conversation is he was this outside party who was bearing witness to what was happening. And he said, you need help now. He was the one who made us aware of the dire need to act, to get me help. And that help came in the form of leaving work. And I was able to leave work because I had disability insurance. And that disability insurance is a backup plan, is pivotal to my surviving and moving into thriving without hitting financial ruin.
Well, that's for sure, because it helps you change your perspective and say, okay, because when there's a money issue, it affects you mentally and puts you back into this depression feeling. So what can you do to fix that? So if you have that left off your shoulders and off your burden, then you can at least, okay, what else can I do? How can I get better? Right?
Yeah, I say it a different way. It's along the same idea, but for me, the disability insurance and the long-term leave was a safety net. And it was that safety net that allowed me to focus on my healing instead of, like you were saying, stressing about the money and stressing about my world financially falling apart.
Yeah.
And the energetics of worrying about money can be so impactful. So to take that off the table and have the space and time to focus on my healing was really important.
That's good. And the healing is so important for the brain injury. It's so needed.
And with most brain injuries, it's not a one and done. You don't walk out of the hospital and say, "Oh, I'm all better." I think you've mentioned that you yourself have a brain injury, and this takes time. It takes time. It takes healing. I'm 4 years out, and I am just getting back from an appointment for some neurofield treatment to help retrain my brain to reduce the inflammation that still persists from the brain injury.
And who would ever think that's what would have an effect? Right? You think, I always say, does the brain rule your body, or does your bowels rule the body?
Well, it's a toss-up, isn't it? It's the vagus nerve plays a huge role. So, they call the gut the second brain. So it's up for debate.
Yes. And I agree. When you're sick, oh my goodness, you wonder, like, who's the ruler of the roost here?
Yeah.
So how did that make you feel when you were going through all of that? How did you feel before you came to this realization? Did it affect you emotionally and in your relationship and your family and everything?
Before I came to the realization of what was going on, part of I use the word terror and I use the word overwhelm to really just scratched the surface of the level of despair that I felt at certain points when I thought, one, this was the end, and that this is how my family was going to see me leave this world. It was pure torture that I would be causing my family and my kids in particular, who were 9, 11, and 13 at the time. That level of trauma, that level of loss, all the things that they wouldn't have.
And why did you feel that way? Why did you feel it was the end? What made you think that?
Well, with the diagnosis, or with the assertion that it wasn't if dementia, but which dementia, and with doctors not correlating it to the procedure, all I knew was I had just hit a really quick path to decline, and things were accelerating very quickly. I didn't have any other explanation. So your brain does funny things, especially when it's not working properly, right?
Sure.
It jumps to conclusions, and you get afraid, and that fear, once it starts happening, it spirals and it takes over, and it if you're not careful, and if you don't have the people around you to pull you out, you can spiral with that fear, and you can go way down into the darkness.
And do you feel like you did some of that?
I definitely did. I feel like there was times where I really felt my loved ones would be better off with me ending it now, so they didn't have to watch me
Decline.
Exactly. And I have some history with suicide in my past, and that really, that suicide was not a loss long term in that it was what saved me. Does that make sense? The person in my life who I lost to suicide was my guide, and was the one who was, whether in spirit or energetically or lesson learned, keeping me safe. When my ideas went from a flash of I need to end it to lingering thoughts, I knew I needed to reach out for help. I knew that I couldn't do this alone. And it was that action of reaching out for help and telling someone else how far into the despair that I was, that changed everything.
But that's really hard, Carrie, to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think to come out and say it out loud to someone is probably one of the biggest fears. I'm not sure why we have that fear, but it definitely is there. And I know I experienced it from the brain injury as well.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know how you can avoid it.
Yeah.
I think you're just in this really black place.
Mm-hmm.
That I talk about sometimes in my shows. Like I was in a room that's dark and black and there's no windows or doors that I can see.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're literally just going around the room trying to find light.
And it's physical too, isn't it? It's a physical weight on your body that weighs you down. It's like a cement block. I don't know if that's what you experienced as well, but for me, it was a physical weight on my body of darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was scary trying to find the light in the room, but it was also very scary when you did find the door handle for the door to turn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the turning part is probably, to me, probably what you're talking about is being outspoken, like to be able to tell someone what you're feeling and how you feel inside. To me, that's kind of what that says. Because I know it took me a while just to turn that darn knob of the door, because you're scared to open up the light. You're scared not to, and you're scared too. I don't understand why, but.
Well, the part of the story that I haven't yet shared is that I was sitting in my bedroom with my mother and my husband downstairs, no more than 50 feet from me. I did not have the courage to call out to them. I did not have the physical ability to reach out in that way. Instead, I had my phone at hand and I pressed a button that dialed my best friend. That was as much as I could do. And so, you know, if listeners are hearing this and thinking, oh my God, that's awful. If you're in a good place now, I ask you to consider who is that person you're going to speed dial, because someone might be 50 feet away, but it's 10 miles, 50 miles when you're in that place of darkness.
It is. And I don't know why we're so frightened of that. I'm not sure. I think it's the shame or the guilt or all of that comes into play somehow. Because there's nothing shameful of feeling like that. I don't understand why we're so scared. I think it's our strength. I think we think we're stronger, or I don't understand why.
I wonder if some of it is feeling like you failed, feeling like you can't handle it yourself, and admitting that to someone else, being vulnerable in that way.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to experience.
And I'm so sorry you did.
Too. I'm sure you did too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't wish it on anyone. That's for sure.
No.
And I don't know if it comes with the brain injury or what part of that comes with that part. I'm not sure.
I believe there is research that indicates the depressive episodes and the chemical imbalance that happens with brain injury is very common.
Yeah. So after feeling like this, you got the strength to tell someone and got the strength to move forward. Mm-hmm. I bet it was slower than molasses, though, when you're in it.
It's a great way to say it, because you know, you're just so desperate to feel better, and as though you're moving through molasses, it is, if you can do it, if you can have the perspective of gratitude for that 1 millimeter of progress, that's what you have to tap into when you're going through something like this.
Yeah.
To keep you going forward.
How did the Lyme disease affect you then?
So it was about a year after they figured out the stroke that I was visiting with a doctor for some brain therapies, and they were like, whoa, what are you doing? They did some tests and they're like, you have Lyme and this is a major problem here. We need to tap into this because your brain's not going to recover. Lyme disease, among the many insidious things that it does, is causes brain inflammation. So we needed to tackle and get rid of the Lyme before we could go full heavy on treating the brain.
Now, you didn't know you had this. How did they know that?
So what's interesting is Lyme is such a controversial disease. It's not even recognized in some states as a legitimate disease, at least in the US. So, and also the testing for Lyme can be very inconsistent. And so I think it's something like you're supposed to have 8 of the 12 markers to be Lyme positive. And I had 6. So, and that was actually, I had 6 of the 12 markers back in 2018 at the same time when they were telling me I had early onset. It was likely Lyme that was causing my memory and cognitive issues way back then. So they had looked at my paperwork, they had looked at my labs and said, this is really important to revisit. And that was how they knew to look.
Oh, okay. And so what is there's a lot of celebrities out there that have had Lyme disease.
Yes, it's really prevalent. And it's, they talk about the rash, right? You look for the bullseye. And the problem with that is not everyone gets the bullseye. And if you get bit behind the knee, or the tick attaches in the groin or on your back or in your hair, you will not see the rash. And part of the symptoms, if you don't get the rash, is flu-like symptoms. Who hasn't felt flu-like symptoms? Like, it's very like, you're not going to go, oh, I must have been bitten by a tick, right? So it's just one of those things that can so easily be missed.
Yeah, because we can say any day of the week, we can say, oh, I'm just off today. I don't know what to have.
Yep.
I don't know why I feel like this. Now, it's easy to know when you see the tick, right? Like you said, when you can't.
Yeah. I mean, and some of these ticks are so small, they fit on the top of a needle head, right? So they're minuscule. But even when it gets a little bit more complicated, because there's co-infections. So there's Lyme, and there's Bartonella and Babiosa. I'm not sure I pronounced that one right, but there are all these co-infections that come from the tick. So you may take care of this one infection, but you actually have these other infections, and the medication doesn't necessarily treat all of them. So it gets very complicated very fast. Now, the awesome thing is, if you do see the rash and you do suspect Lyme and you get quick treatment, the ability to knock out the Lyme in the first couple of weeks is exponentially higher than if you miss it and it becomes acute, long-term Lyme.
Oh, okay. Well, so that's favorable, like, if you can.
Well, I mean, it's favorable in the sense that you do have some control. I mean, if you go out go for a hike, there's a good friend of mine who shared a post the other day. She was reminding us, if you're out hiking, remember to tuck your pants into your socks, and remember to check yourself from head to toe, or have someone else to check you, and remember to wash your clothing before you put it directly into the wash. These are just simple measures you can take to avoid or prevent attachment of a tick. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's kind of like getting pregnant, and you can have a pill to fix it if you get it quick enough. Kind of.
Well, first is, wearing the condom, right?
Yeah, I guess that's
and then afterwards is, the quick treatment, right? I didn't know we were going to go here, but if we're going to go there.
Well, we might as well add a bit of laughter to it, because it's just becoming so predominant lately in the last couple of years. With I can't think of the Canadian singer that sang Bird. She talked about having Lyme disease, but it's not found very quickly. So that's another problem with it.
Well, the education levels by the doctors, and what I would say is the systemic awareness of Lyme and the presentation of Lyme is underdone. There needs to be more education. There needs to be more acknowledgement. There needs to be more, like the CDC.
Yeah.
In the US, there's a lot of limitations on what they acknowledge around Lyme. And so that gets in the way of being able to treat Lyme. I know there are some states that practitioners are not allowed to treat Lyme.
Oh, really? And once you get it, you got it. Like, you can't get rid of it, can you?
What's that?
Can you ever get rid of it?
My doctor has shared that that mine is gone. I believe it can be gone, but it's not.
It sits dormant, sort of.
It can go really, really deep. Now, I did a lot of. I spent a fair amount of time doing some alternative European therapies that are not common in the U.S. to really dive deep into my body systems and pull it out and eliminate it.
Right.
And really that's what you need to do, because some of the treatments will actually force it deeper, force it into hiding and force it deeper into your body systems. And that is just trouble.
It's like a parasite then, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I think some people have trouble with parasites like that, where it gives them these different symptoms and problems, and then they don't even know they have a parasite.
Yeah. Yeah. From water or from whatever sources that they've been exposed to.
Yeah, walking on the beach in another country or anything, I guess, is what you can get it. Not really understanding how that happens, but I don't know why we don't have a vaccine for this yet. Have a vaccine for everything now. So what do you think, how did this affect your family and yourself?
At the very least, it was incredibly disruptive and incredibly painful for my family to bear witness to the struggle that I was going through, and in a large part feel helpless to knowing how to solve the problem. You know, my husband just wanted to solve it for me, and it was complex enough that even finding doctors to help me took time.
Yeah. I think even just the brain injury part alone, we don't seem to know very much about as well. I know when they said, well, I said, after a car accident, why are you not testing people? Well, because they said they need an initial test to see what you were like before the accident. So I guess I don't understand, but.
Well, you know, when I finally got the conclusion that it was a stroke and I understood it to be a brain injury, and I started looking up the common symptoms of brain injury. Now, there are a million different ways that you can get a brain injury, and they're shifting from the language of traumatic brain injury to acquired brain injury. And there's a million different ways you can have that happen. But what's fascinating and so important to realize is there's some very common threads between all the different types of brain injuries. So each person's going to experience it uniquely, but there's going to be some common symptoms. And so as I read and I learned from different communities about brain injury and stroke, I was fired up. I was pretty freaking pissed because of all the doctors I'd been talking to, none of them put the pieces together. That puzzle that you're talking about, all the pieces were there. I was showing classic signs of brain injury. And some of them were saying, you're fine, it's just in your head. Well, yes, it is in my head. And I'd like your help. And so for a while, I was really fired up about that. But there's a part of me that understands that the scientific understanding, the medical understanding of brain injury is still so limited. There's still so much we don't understand. And the education of the doctors to recognize brain injury is woefully underdone.
Yes. Yes. So where did this take you after moving ahead a little bit? You had a disability plan, which is awesome.
Yeah.
To get you through these rough times. So you could take time in healing. So I like that backup plan that you had there.
Yeah.
But what about, moving ahead? How did you move ahead with this now that you had time to do some healing and quiet time?
Yeah, and literally it was quiet time. One of the pieces that I haven't shared is that when you're facing your end, when you think this is it, it becomes clear, or it became clear for me, that I hadn't done what I came here on this lovely planet of ours to do. I hadn't served the greater good in the way that I was meant to serve. And so between my kids and that drive to show up and contribute to the world in a meaningful way, those two things were propelled me and served as the foundation for my grit and resilience. And when I got to feeling better and started healing, I knew I needed to do something to bring meaning both to what I had experienced and to contribute. For me, it's always been so important to contribute. And part of that is now using what I've learned through my recovery journey to help others do the same, but in a quicker, smoother, easier way. Helping them have shortcuts, helping them feel heard and seen. I don't know about you when you had your car accident, but I felt so alone. I felt so unheard. I felt so unseen. And
I'm not
by
sure
my
why.
doctor. What's that?
I wonder why that is. Because yes, you do. You feel very, and I can't say you feel lonely. I'm not going to say lonely, but I
But
feel
isolated.
isolated. Yeah.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that black room, like I
Yep.
talked about. Like I
Yeah.
just by myself and can't find my way.
Yeah.
So to speak. Yeah. So wonder why that is. It's part of the depression part, I guess, maybe.
I think part of it is because there's such an intensity of the symptoms, and it is so far from, at least what I experienced, they're not really words that can capture the depth of the and intensity of the experience, the exhaustion, the pain. If you don't know it, you don't know it. But if you do know it, you do know it. And when it's not like you have 10 loved ones who have all had a brain injury. So often you're the only one. So there's isolation even among your loved ones because they haven't experienced, they don't know. They can try and empathize, they can try and sympathize, but they really don't get it. And you feel alone in your experience.
That's true. Very true.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I just wanted someone to feel what I felt.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't literally hurt your head like, you broke your leg kind of feeling. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of hurt. It's the kind of hurt that it has like the strong hold on your brain, like a strong, like you're not in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
is. That's how I kind of felt.
Yeah. And it's that loss of control and that loss of, to some degree, functionality and loss of identity. When we have a brain injury or other forms of chronic illness, there's parts of who we were that we no longer have. And there is a loss and a grieving around that. And that's hard for other people to understand as well.
Well, and you need to heal for that time too.
Mm-hmm.
See, with me, it's floor. Like if flooring changes, a tile floor to carpet, or carpeting that's patterned, or like different types of floor or stairs, I have trouble with depth perception. So I have trouble with, and the different flooring happens a lot, like at an airport. There's surprisingly, without you even knowing it, it goes from cement to carpet to tile, like it's continually changing.
Wow.
And I didn't realize how much that impacted me. And it's not something you can explain to somebody like your family member.
Yeah.
Like you can't explain it. You can't understand it yourself.
Well,
So,
and part of it is that they'll say, well, that was 4 years ago. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. 4 years ago, you're all done. Your time's up. No more brain injury.
You've grieved. You're done.
You're done.
It's over now. It's all gone. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? So how do you get better from Lyme? You help people with Lyme disease. You help people with chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia, and what other kinds of things?
So one of the other things that I was experiencing was mold illness. So I have experience with that. I have experience with Meniere's. Part of my diagnosis was functional neurological disorder, which is basically the brain looks okay-ish, but the software is not working. So brain's misfiring, basically. That was one way they explained it. So there's a whole range of illnesses and long-term health challenges that I support. And really part of the foundation of how I support those facing these challenges is with the chronic illness life cycle, which captures the different phases of chronic illness, starting from initial onset all the way through to healing and thriving. And so I use that as a foundation to create a pathway to recovery.
So you used your own experience.
I did.
To develop this. And what kinds of things has it helped people do? Eat again properly and work and
yeah, I mean, so much of it really is helping them take back their power. When you're sick, we so easily have been taught to give our power away to the doctors, give it away to the professionals, and to look for answers outside of ourselves. And one of the things that I do is I help my clients take back their power, tap into their inner wisdom so that they can become aware of what they know is the next best step. When it comes from within, it's so much more powerful than being told you really need to, you should, right? Who wants that? Now, it's not talking about eliminating the doctors, because part of what I teach my clients is how to become an empowered advocate so that they can make the most of their doctor's appointments before, during, and after. But it's really getting strong in knowing yourself, knowing your body, listening to the clues that your body's telling you. Sometimes I'm working with clients who have mystery illnesses and they don't know what the heck is going on because they don't fit into any one box. And with our medical system, if you don't fit into a box, you're kind of lost at sea.
Yeah,
so
what to do with you.
Yeah. So I help them tap into what the clues are telling them and which direction to go next to try and get more answers.
To either feel better or to get answers to feel better, one of the two.
Exactly.
And you talk about food. I guess nutrition is definitely one of the areas.
So that potentially could play in, but really not a ton, because I am not giving health advice. I am helping them with the tools and the mindsets, and I have a holistic approach. So we're looking at well-being at the levels of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So it is an integrated wellness that we're aiming for. So if food is part of the solution, I will help them find ways to implement those solutions, but I'm not giving specific food advice like eat this, don't eat that.
Right. And that's awesome, because that can only empower them more to find out what's working and what isn't working for them. It's like a map, like you were giving them a map.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm helping them design the map with me, because their power is in knowing the landscape of their lives, the landscape of their illness. So I'm giving them that power, working with them, collaborating.
What is probably one client that you've dealt with since your injury that kind of surprised you, and that's why it's given you power to do what you're doing? Can you say there was one that was more pronounced? And
well, I'll mention one client who, she came to me with wanting a medical binder and wanting to implement X, Y, and Z. She wanted the logistics. And when we worked together and we did an assessment of where she was and what was working and what was not working, and I offered her a report and recommendations from that as part of the initial assessment. She came back to me and she said, yes, I want those, but first and foremost, I want to find my voice. I want to learn to advocate for myself. And what's been beautiful with that client is that as she found her voice, she had tangible physical healing because she was getting results from her doctors. She was getting answers from her doctors. So we went from this logistical, we've got to plan this out, we've got to get this paperwork, to that inner work that helped her find her voice and get what she needed to actually heal.
Yeah, because we get stumped by doctors, don't you? When you go and you don't get an answer, and you leave there frustrated and, well, is it in my head or is it not in my head? Like, you have no power, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a little too much. Any medical gaslighting is too much, but there's unfortunately a lot of medical gaslighting, and predominantly they're disproportionately for women. I think we're still living with the after effects of Freud's assertion of hysteria. And we're still feeling the after effects from doctors who think, well, it's just hormonal, or it's just too much stress, or, it's in her head. And that's really devastating.
Yeah, when you're really having problems.
Yeah.
Especially mentally.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why there's so many mental health issues.
Yeah. Well, and they get really uncomfortable with the mental health issues. If you don't fit in their box, the box that I was talking about earlier, and you see a doctor and you have all these complex issues, unfortunately, in my case, I ran into several doctors who quickly wiped their hands on me and said, go away. Like, I don't know what to do with you. I need you to leave. Right? And they'll come up with these bogus explanations that make no sense whatsoever, but it just gets you out of their office. And that's got to stop.
Well, it's the research part. They couldn't find it. It didn't come to them instantly. So you're too hard to deal with right now. Yeah. Carrie, you can go.
Well, and also, I don't know how it is in Canada. I'm not very familiar with the Canadian medical system, but in the US, I think the way the health insurance works and the way the lanes are set up for specialists is there's too much competition and not enough collaboration between the different types of doctors so that they're talking to each other and they're willing to say, hey, I'm seeing a little bit of this that's in my field and a little bit of this in your field. Let's talk about what might be going on together, right? Yeah. Instead, there's this setup of them like, this is my domain, this is your domain, don't touch my stuff. And that does not help the patient whatsoever.
Especially for chronic illness, because you don't know what or where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason. Always.
There's always a reason.
Always. Well, and our Canadian medical is going downhill very, very quickly. Everybody in the world loved it so much. And now it's coming to the point where we're losing doctors and nurses, and we don't have enough staff, and the doctors aren't getting paid enough, and there's not enough of them. So that all plays a big part in our medical system. And I believe, don't quote me, but I really honestly feel that the private and the public system is coming to Canada.
Okay.
It's already here. We do have a private system, and I think it's going to become stronger. Only because I don't think we're getting the care that we should be. Like, people are dying getting to the hospital because the hospital is closed in their small town because there's not enough staff.
Oh my gosh.
So they're driving further to go to the next hospital, and they're dying before they get there.
That's awful.
Yeah. So I don't think there's much of any system when COVID really brought out a lot of issues in our flaws in our system.
The weaknesses,
Yeah. It
the
sure.
vulnerabilities.
Yeah. And I think with chronic illness, it's one of those things where it comes and goes in your body. And sometimes I'm having a better day, and sometimes I'm not having a very good day. So it makes it very hard for the medical staff to try and analyze that.
Yeah.
So I do have some sympathy for them because it's not an easy task. But going back to there was some good and bad with you having a plan with your family. You did some things.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you could have done better or different, do you think?
Well, I am a huge advocate of disability insurance. I think I've mentioned that. I am a huge advocate of working with a financial advisor to help you get all those things in place. Like, I felt really secure, even as sick as I was. I knew my wills and my advance directives and my power of attorney. All of those were already figured out. And so I felt like we had done that really right. Maybe having more of a buffer, more of a emergency resource.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think enough people are saving, and we have saved, but when a medical crisis comes, the costs can be devastating.
Oh, like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It could be for pills, or some cancer treatments are $10,000 a time.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. One thing that we haven't mentioned, I might have said something about the mold exposure that I had. And when we figured out that my house had mold, and that we needed to remediate most of the house, one of the things that we did right by miracle, I don't even remember doing it, but our home insurance, we had added a rider for mold. Now, mold is everywhere, and it's insidious, and it will take you down. And so if you do it now, get on the phone, call your home insurance, get the mold rider to mitigate the costs of the mold remediation.
It's
for sure.
Kind of like when they have to tear down the walls for asbestos. It's kind of like that, where it gets in and it's very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah, we had to rip down all the walls, ceilings, all the drywall, scrub them, decontaminate them. I mean, the level, and you need specialists to do that, just like you need specialists for the asbestos.
Yeah, true. Very difficult. I know we could talk about this some more because there's just so much to talk about when it comes to that. But what would you like to give message to your listeners? What kind of final message would you like to?
I want to bear witness to you. If you're listening and you have a chronic illness or dealing with long-term health challenges, I want you to know I'm here and I get it, and you are not alone. And if you are feeling the darkness and you are feeling the despair, please, please, please reach out for help, whether it's me or your best friend or your speed dial doctor, if you have one of those. Whatever you need to do, please know it's real. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard, and you are worthy of solutions. That's what's important for me to share with the audience tonight.
Thank you. That's really, really important. I can't say that enough, because when you're in the dark, you're not really sure what to do. So thank you. Thank you. And it's nice to know that there's someone that you can reach out to, whether you have an answer or whether you can get the answer for them. That's really helpful. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I would just I never want to end these darn things.
It's been a great conversation, Tina. I've loved it.
It has been good. And I can't find oh, here we are. Lost myself there for a second. I want everyone to take a moment and subscribe to our channel and click on that bell. Click on that bell down there below. Click on that subscribe button if you already haven't. Why not? Please do. And if you are thinking about that special someone right now watching the show that you haven't spoken to in a while, please reach out to them. Knock on the door, phone them. We still have phones. Zoom them, FaceTime them, whatever it is, but tell them how much you love and care about them today, because you really don't know what tomorrow will bring. And stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. We have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world today, just like Carrie, coming to us from Maryland, United States. I think you'll be entertained, informed, and I hope that we've motivated you to have your unique plan. Nobody's Superman, nobody's Supergirl in this world. So expect the unexpected. And thank you again to all our listeners. I have linked Carrie's information down below in the description box for y'all, so it's all there. Reach out to Carrie. We are on all podcast platforms. That's actually hard to say. It's a tongue twister. We are on all podcast platforms: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, and Facebook group. We have a VIP group that you are welcome to join. And I always share our time and end with Carol Burnett, and I'm sure Carrie knows who Carol Burnett is. A beautiful lady. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. I'm so sorry we had to end our show today. We were having so much fun. Thank you, Carrie, for coming out today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I'd love to have you back again, talk a little bit more about these strange chronic illnesses that we all seem to know somebody that has. It's like all around us, everyone. Our aunt, our best friend, our brother, our sister, it's everywhere.
It's 6 in 10 adults.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So thank you again for coming out to our show today. Be kind and stay safe. Expect the unexpected. And thank you, Carrie, for coming. Bye, everybody. Till next time.